The reality of being an entrepreneur while holding down a full-time job is not unique. But each individual story of the entrepreneur that is holding down a full-time job is. On this episode of Here to Edify, I sit down with Allan Meade to hear his journey to entrepreneurship while simultaneously holding down a full-time job.
Here to edify.
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 I want to start off with just asking you to tell us, what is Concept Factory Atlanta?
Yeah, well, first things first, thank you for having me. But yeah, so as far as what Concept Factory Atlanta is, we are a virtual and physical collaborative hub for visual storytellers. Now, what I mean by visual storytellers is a visual storyteller. It's the filmmaker, it's photographers, animators, even screenwriters, because essentially screenwriting is writing for a visual medium. So we aspire to be a co-working space. And the reason we call it a collaborative hub is because at the core of who we are, we want to bring people together. So filmmakers pairing up with screenwriters, pairing up with animators, actors, the whole nine of people truly coming together to create great content.
So this is an entrepreneurial endeavor, which I have a soft spot for entrepreneurs. It's just not easy. It's just really not always easy. So my question is, like, has that been something you've always wanted to do? Are you solely working with Concept Factory as like, I'm 100% entrepreneur now, or is it something that you're like, I'm slowly moving into it while also having, the job on the side? Tell us.
Yeah, well, I'll answer the second question first. I definitely still have my full-time job. I aspire to get to the point where, and I know the Lord is going to have me get there eventually. He's kind of put that on my heart, but as of right now, he's like, hey, focus on Concept Factory and that full-time job that I put you in that you prayed for as well. So, and of course, just being a good steward, and, we live in a practical world with bills, and, I need to have food on the table and things of that sort. So because of that, I am still working a full-time job. And I'll come back to that. But as far as have I always wanted to be an entrepreneur? I would say a little bit of yes and no. It wasn't something that from childhood I immediately was like, hey, when I grow up, I just want to be an entrepreneur. I guess I more so really didn't understand the full scope of what entrepreneurs, like who they are, until I was more so in my 20s. And but I will say, looking back in childhood, I would always tell people that your purpose was probably revealed sometime during your childhood. I call it like childhood purpose. And I think that reason is because when God creates us, he puts so many desires and dreams in us. And he knows that when we're children, those desires and dreams are like at full-fledged, they're not messed with at that point. But the older we get and the more we go through this world, excuse me, we have people tell us, oh, you can't do that. Unfortunately, some of us come into families that say, oh, you'll never do that, or nobody else in your family did this. Who do you think you are? You're trying to be better than. And then, money and resources and locations, things of that sort all play into people saying, well, maybe I'm not good enough to do insert dream here, so. But since I was a childhood, I would always be like very business oriented, very creative and things of that sort. And even going back to the question about, working a full-time job with Concept Factory, would I ideally love to sit every day and just work on Concept Factory stuff? Absolutely. I would, if God gave me the option right now, I would do it. But I will say, as working a full-time job and doing the business, it causes me to be more disciplined with my time. It causes me to take Concept Factory more seriously, because if I right now had 40 hours a week just to put towards it and nothing else, who knows if right now where he has me, I would be disciplined enough. So maybe God is getting me to a point to say, hey, I'll release you from that full-time job once I can see that you're going to be so disciplined in this. So sometimes we just have to realize that God is taking us on a process. And so, and then also I'm learning so much and able to apply so many methods and systems in place due to my full-time job that when I started Concept Factory Atlanta, it was like second nature. I'm like, okay, I already know how to use the Google suite. I know how to use every app on Google because my job's made me do it, 8-9 hours a day. I already know how to use X, Y, and Z because of my job. Or, hey, because of my job, I know 3 to 4 people I can call up for help. So it's really, truly true to form of Romans 8:28, he works all things together for our good. And he just truly is doing that with my life more than ever.
Yeah, I can really appreciate you acknowledging that even in the midst of like, okay, in the future, I'd like to be doing this full time, but seeing how where you are now is not for naught. Because I think sometimes when we're moving towards something, it's easy to be like, oh, I just want this portion to be done and not see that there's so much to glean from like this space, you know, where you are. So I appreciate that. But when we're talking about how you're saying, you know, as a child and these things kind of showcasing themselves, tell me about like what drove you to want to create this type of space, because I'm assuming, you know, like you're a creative person, and so that could have manifested in many different ways, but you chose, I want to make a hub for all creators, creatives to come together. So tell me what drove you to like, I want my entrepreneurial endeavor to look like this.
Yeah, and it actually was birthed out of a problem, which I think is a really good thing for an entrepreneur to, I want to more so say, not just discover a problem, but actually be I hate to use the word victim, but actually be a victim of that problem, to say, hey, I experienced this and now I want to go and change it. And for me, it looked like, you know, I've been fortunate enough to live in different states and cities, even in my early 20s, right after college. And just even being from the time in college, I've lived in North Carolina, Miami, and now Atlanta. And just going to those different places, you know, I'm always presented with the question of, okay, who else is creative that lives in this city? Who else is in my age range or comes from like, you know, similar demographics? You know, of course, also the question of who out here is a Christian, you know, filmmaker or photographer, things of that sort. And so finding that community was always sometimes difficult. Thank God we have things like LinkedIn and Instagram to where you can just simply type in hashtag Atlanta photographers and you get 3,000 of them come up. But, you know, there wasn't always that option. And so pretty much in 2019, when I still lived in Florida, I was working on a short film at the time, and my screenwriter, she was in Texas. My two other co-producers were in North Carolina and I was in Miami. So we were doing the whole virtual thing way before COVID. So with that, we decided that it was time for us to finally, in the point of the short film development, to really go into like, okay, we need to have a physical meetup space. We need to go ahead, hash out with a bunch of index cards and sticky notes, the full story plot. And so we knew that we wanted to meet up physically, but none of us really had the funds to fly to either Texas or North Carolina. It was all so far. So we picked Atlanta because between North Carolina, Texas, and Florida, you get Georgia. And so we knew flights in Atlanta were cheap too because of that big airport. But so we chose Atlanta. And the problem that I was faced with, I said that we had nowhere to meet up as creatives. There was no hub in Atlanta, let alone anywhere else that said, hey, all creatives can come here and you'll find your resources and community and just knowledge and just like a creative atmosphere to be able to work on these film projects and or other creative endeavors. And we searched up and down the internet trying to find spaces. We looked up co-working spaces. They were too expensive. We looked up local libraries for meeting spaces, but they said you had to be a resident of the county in Georgia. And so none of us were residents. And so we really finally, thank God my co-producer Paris, she said, well, how about we just do an Airbnb? So we ended up finding a really cool Airbnb that had just been renovated. And it was a very like antique home, but all the like stuff inside was new. So they had these wide open spaces and walls and countertops. So we were able to really have a good time. But after that, when I moved to Atlanta, literally, several months later, which I didn't even know, God literally just sprung it on my heart, was like, hey, I want you to go to Atlanta. And I'm just like, I've literally been in Florida for just 2 years. So it was kind of a shock to me, but I see now in hindsight that he was setting up the process. You know, of course, as he always is, you know, God is so much bigger than our imagination. And so after getting to Atlanta, I'm just like, okay, you know, I'm around creative people. Everybody here the entrepreneurial vibe in Atlanta is infectious. It's just really, really thick. And especially even with minorities, especially honestly, minority women. So like minority women in Atlanta are killing the game. The men honestly have to step up their game a little bit. And so let alone, not only are there a lot of entrepreneurs, but there's also a ton of creatives here, filmmakers, as they call it, the Hollywood of the South. So once I got here, I'm just like, hey, I really need this. And not only do I need this, I want this as far as a community for all of us to come together. Why is it that I have to keep going back to Instagram just to find somebody to connect with? And then that person can't get connected. And it's always that, oh, I know a guy, when this could be an actual physical space. And also, for me, I'm sure everybody can relate, when you're, a young in your mid 20s, you're watching, you're watching the bank account, you're watching the dollar. And sometimes filmmakers have these huge aspirations, but yet they say, hey, I want to go out here and make a film, but I don't know the first thing about Final Draft. Either I can't afford Final Draft, and let alone if I want to shoot this film, where do I get a three to $5,000 camera? Where do I get this? And before you know it, it's so expensive for resources that this person says, well, just forget it. I can't do it. And I think that's unfortunate, because why not be in a hub to where you say, I pay a membership to be here, and I'm rubbing shoulders every day with 10 other filmmakers, where this one guy has a drone, this other guy has a microphone, this other guy has X, Y, and Z. We can all come together and create a shared project. And now we're helping each other succeed by a community.
Yeah, that is amazing. Also, when you consider, you were saying like in 2019, having to like communicate virtually, with these other individuals, and then 2020 comes and you are establishing this business in really what has to be a virtual world, because of the pandemic. And so you were talking a lot about physical spaces, but obviously, because of what's going on, had to start off virtual. So most people, they were kind of fighting in 2020 to figure out, how do we make this virtual? You all started virtual, and now how do you make it physical?
Yeah, I first just want to start, even with everything going virtual in 2020, and it looks like it's going to still be that way in 2021, at least for the most part. That's just another example of how God works all things together for our good, because nobody knew 2020 was going to come. I mean, January, February, we were all just like, hey, this is the year of vision, which it still was for me. I thank God for that. But with that, because of us starting Concept Factory in the middle of a pandemic, not only were we very conscious of resources, and when I say we, I had two friends from my college. They helped me out in the very first early stages, just to kind of help me get it going. And so we were like really conscious of cost and things of that sort, as well as we were able to have tons of examples of large and small companies restructuring to now fit virtually. Even my own job, I work at a college in Atlanta, and they were learning how to do everything virtually when it originally said that it could not be done. So with that, I was able to sit back and kind of just analyze and take notes to say, okay, how about we build this into the business? How about we do this? And the blessed thing was that when we pretty much came out the gate saying, here's Concept Factory, all people knew was virtual, as well as in 2019, if you had asked someone to hop on a webcam, they would have been very tense and nervous. By the end of 2020, we could do webcam in our sleep. People kind of stopped caring about what they looked like on camera after about the 6 month of quarantine. They're like, look, just get me on this camera, whatever. And so it really all worked out in our favor. But as far as, to answer your question of what the physical space will look like, I believe in dreaming big. Like, dream big, start small, or start practically, but dream big. And part of that, what I really want this space to be, is to just be very open, and I want it to be very strategically designed. I'm like super excited for one day when I'll get to sit down with an architect and interior designer and talk about how I want the physical space to be a direct reflection of our mission. And our mission is to bring together, visual storytellers. So I don't want this to just carry like an average co-working space feel, to look like, okay, I'll walk in and there's a few shared spaces, but mostly it's all separate desks and rooms. And no, we're going to have our meeting rooms, we're going to have our conference areas and things of that sort. But I want like transformable lounge spaces, and I want couches to where you can almost connect them like puzzles, to where people can sit around each other. Of course, we will have to think about now, social distancing and safety measures and what that will look like. But even something simple as having a shared collaborative space with glass walls in between, to where you can still talk to people in real time, but you don't feel so boxed off, And I also have to think about, I'm an extrovert, but I also have to think about my introverts. Some people choose to say like, hey, I kind of just want my own space. So I think having those private phone booths, private meeting rooms, or just private workspaces is also important, because as creatives, we are very diverse creatures. Very, very diverse. So what works for me, I'm the type that I would just love to sit in a full room all day with people and just talk and work, stuff like that. Other people are like, hey, I need my space. I need to go write my script by myself, and I don't want to talk to another human being for the next 6 months. And hey, that's okay. So those are just going to be some of the things, in addition to just really having shared resources, as I mentioned, having a camera cage room to where, people can come up as a member. They can check out a camera to go shoot something. They can, being a member, they can go, they can get discounted software to Final Draft and Adobe Suite and things of that sort. And other than that, we do have a lot of cool things in store in terms of like wanting to have a theater screening room and wanting to have some outdoor spaces for like some meetups and some cookouts, because we Southern, so we got to have some cookouts and things of that sort. So really excited for the physical space.
Yeah, I think even just hearing you describe it is like super exciting. Tell me what sets Concept Factory Atlanta apart from anything else that would be like, oh, we're doing something similar, but what sets Concept Factory Atlanta apart?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is just more so the community aspect of how, I went to North Carolina A&T, and I think about that school versus other universities. At some universities, yeah, everybody has pride for their school, but some universities are just seen as like, hey, you go there, you get your degree, and then it's very like individualized. Well, at North Carolina A&T, if anybody knows, like the Aggies, we are proud of our school. And when you go there at HBCU, you get more of this experience to where it's like, hey, I'm a part of something bigger than myself, but I'm also going as an individual person. And I majored in journalism in college, and our department was called Crosby Hall. And we were one of the smaller majors on campus, and we only had about maximum maybe 400 to 500 students. But out of that 400 to 500, we would see the same 100 probably on like week in and week out. And pretty much the community aspect that we created within Crosby Hall, we called ourselves like the Crosby Kids. And it was just very infectious. And once again, you felt like I'm coming in as an individual, but I recognize immediately walking in that I'm a part of something bigger than myself. And it really just created this sense of I want to work harder. If I see my brother or sister over there slacking, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to have a heart to heart with them to tell them they need to step it up because I can see their potential. I know this person, even if I don't know you, but I find out that you're in my major, I'm going to support you, even if I don't know you from Adam or Eve, So with that, I want to really create that. And I think that's what's going to set Concept Factory apart from just an average co-working space, because anybody can offer a shared space. But when you bring in that community to say like, hey, I see you now as a brother or sister, that changes the game. And that's actually one of our values for Concept Factory is family. And, next to it, we say bonds deeper than friendship, a way of viewing those around us. So we don't want to just see somebody as like, oh, you're another member. No, you're now a creative in Atlanta. We have a shared connection and we're going to help each other out. So
How you were saying community, that's what I was thinking as I'm listening to you talk. I'm like, obviously we know America is a very individualistic society, but even with that mentality as Americans, in practice, you have to have someone else. Like no one is doing anything solely on their own. And if so, it's probably not as great as what it could be. So I appreciate the fact that this also kind of does push back against this idea of like, I'm gonna do it myself. It's like, well, no, I have a wealth of people to lean on, and we're leaning on each other. It's not like, oh, I feel bad because I'm asking Tim to help me with this because he's helping you to help him with something else. So I love that. In the name Atlanta, Concept Factory Atlanta, is this something that you are desiring to have, like, kind of not? I say franchise, but that would include someone else, having it. But
it's like multiple locations.
Yes, multiple locations.
Absolutely. And I remember we're back around February of last year, well, 2020, meaning when I was putting together the initial, like, I feel like the Holy Spirit was like, hey, put together like a vision thing. I'm the man of vision 110%. So whenever I feel like God drops something on my spirit, especially strongly, I got to get it out in front of me because I got to see it. I'm very visually led. And so with that, during like my first stages of putting together like the vision plan is I made the logo Concept Factory Atlanta, and then I made Concept Factory Charlotte, Concept Factory Austin, Concept Factory Miami. And I just kept going to different cities to where I know that there is a strong independent filmmaking community, but there's a lack of resources. And that's mostly my heart behind this business, is to be able to say, hey, like, we understand there's some great filmmakers in Los Angeles, and we understand there's great filmmakers in New York, but you all have so many resources and community already at your fingertips. What about the people who are sitting in Charlotte, North Carolina, where there's not a huge film presence, but you have people who are creative sitting there with wonderful ideas? What about Miami and Orlando and, people of different cultures and things of that sort? So in my research, I really wanted to target the cities that say we need this, because we have these great ideas. It's just I don't have a film studio sitting 100 feet outside my door like LA, So I think people, what I've noticed, and I've been to LA a few times, and what I've noticed is people in Atlanta have a stronger passion, but they don't have as much resources. People in LA have so many resources, but not that strong of a passion. And it kind of comes out of the idea of what you really don't have or what you have to work harder at getting, you tend to work really hard at it. It's almost like, this is an unfortunate example, but here in America, we have so many luxuries at our fingertips. And sometimes we just take it for granted. Or, I even had to catch myself this morning, complaining about going to work. And I'm just sitting there like, wait a minute, there's some people in other nations and even in this nation who would dream of having to wake up at 6 a.m. just to go to a job because they're homeless or something. So sometimes when you don't have something, you work harder at it. So I say all that to say is that we absolutely are going to have multiple locations. I would love for this to be something to where it says like Concept Factory coming to a city near you, or that, hey, whether I'm in whatever state I'm in. And I think we will eventually branch off to LA and New York, but that's not my number one goal. I think if anything after Atlanta is going to be, I really want to target Austin, Texas. Personally, I just love Austin. I got to visit back in 2018, and it's a phenomenal city full of creatives. And they also have a very heavy independent film community there. So I really want to target Austin. And then after that, I'm going to, I got to look out for Charlotte and then probably Miami after that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. We are a very kind of coastal nation, like that's where all the main stuff is happening. But kind of as what you're saying, like there are creative individuals like in so many other states, and realistically, not everyone is going to be able to arrive in New York City or LA, but to have someone thinking about, and yes, we know that you're not the only person, but to have someone thinking about, hey, I've seen the creatives and I want a space for them where it's kind of, I feel like you're assisting in people being able to bloom where they're planted and not feel like I have to pick up and move to be able to do something. We've seen that in the past just over and over again, that when you're able to do stuff where you are, you're also benefiting your community. And so you're bringing up more than just yourself. So I really love that. And I'm really excited for the future of Concept Factory Atlanta, just what that will be, what it is already. Like I said, if you all go to the Instagram and on the website, like you all, you would not think that it's just been a year.
I appreciate it. That's good to know. And God is he's so good because he's so faithful. And like I said, just even looking back, it's funny because they say, oh, hindsight is 2020. But now that 2020 is hindsight, literally, I'm able to really see and appreciate the goodness of God, because he's just been working this thing since I was born. And honestly, I heard a quote the other day and it said, God was looking out for you generations before you even got here. And I just think about, something as simple as my parents meeting, them coming from, they both met in Virginia, but they were from two totally different areas of Virginia that would have normally never crossed paths. And just seeing how God brought them together, and then me to be born at a certain time, and then to where I grew up, went to college, worked, all of that is just baked together to be able to help me for such a time as this. And even for like the website, I remember one of my friends that she helped me kind of kick Concept Factory off. I remember when we were talking about creating a website, she was like, all right, who are we going to hire for the website designer? And I was just like, nobody, because first of all, that'll be about $3,000 that I don't have. I'm not taking out a loan. I did that at college, and I'm still paying that back. And, but thank God, even through college though, I was able to really learn, website builders and website design, branding, things of that sort. So coming into Concept Factory, God had already given me 6 or 7 years of experience with that. And honestly, I remember in college, I had like my own marketing kind of side hustle type thing where I would do logos and flyers for people. And for many, many people, probably 80 to 90% of all the clients I had, I did it for free. Or I would just say, hey, no worries about it. And, they would either be trying to start their own business, or it would be like a church in the very, very early stages. And I knew they didn't really have a lot of money. Some people would say like, hey, let me know, or I can give you $50. This is all I have, but I just really need this logo. And, sometimes I would think like I could be making a lot more money, but I just kind of felt led to just sow it into them to say, hey, don't worry about the logo. It's my contribution to your dream or whatever. And now looking back, God was giving me not only practice for Concept Factory, but so many people have reached out to help me in this process. So many people have encouraged me, called me up saying, hey, Allan, we love what you're doing. Keep going. So many people have said, hey, Allan, if there's just anything we can do, even for free, we'll volunteer. Like, just let us know. And just even money wise, we had a local business here in Atlanta. We went through a program. They gave us a $1,500 grant, and they said no strings attached. They literally sent the check to my mailbox and said you can deposit it. And so looking back at that is I want to encourage creatives and Christians everywhere is that God does not forget what you do. There's a scripture that says the Lord is not going to forget the work that you've done for him. Whoever's listening, I just want to encourage you that just be the light of Christ, shine through your creative gifts. Everybody's not supposed to be an entrepreneur, but also everybody, like, same way God's gifted you in being and running this show as a podcaster, but I can't do that. That's not what he called me to do. Same way he didn't call me to be a doctor or a nurse or a construction worker or a veterinarian. Everybody has their own skill set. And I even say creative skill set because we serve a creative God. And as long as you are operating in what God had told you to do, you are going to impact lives.
Yeah, no, I love, appreciate, and just affirm that. Before we close, I want to ask you, what are your words to lift by? So the name of the show is Here to Edify. And I just strongly believe that whether we are super conscious of it or not, there is something that we hold on to that keeps us going in the midst of just a world where things are, constantly turning us to and fro. So what are your words to lift by?
Yeah, in addition to the word of God, I would say there's so many scriptures that I have to consistently keep before me. But one of my favorite scriptures and one of the things that's been on my heart this year is, of course, as I mentioned it before twice already, Romans 8:28, and also, in Habakkuk 2:3, it talks about make the vision plain, for it is yet for an appointed time. Though it tarry, wait for it will come to pass. And then there's another part, and I believe in Zechariah, where it says, who dares despise the day of small beginnings? So for whatever entrepreneur out there is thinking, oh my gosh, I have 0 clients, or I don't even have a logo yet, but I have this vision, like, God is faithful to provide for you, but it's not going to be in the traditional way that you think it's going to be. He's going to provide, so that way when it does come through, the only person you can give glory to is him.
Yeah, I'm so appreciative. I think that this is great. I always glean from these things, and then I get excited for those that will listen and glean from this as well. As I said before, I wish you the best. I'm so thankful that I got to sit down and have this conversation and hear. And these stories are always helpful to those out there that are just like, I'm interested. I don't know what that is, and listening to you quote Zechariah, like not despising the day of small beginnings is just like, yeah, that can be hard, but it is a good reminder that like every bit of the process is necessary, and it's the foundation. And without the foundation, we know whatever is on top will crumble. So, it is the building of a strong foundation. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode of Here to Edify. New episodes drop every Wednesday and can be found wherever you listen. And as always, I hope to catch you listening next time.